All right, we're gonna get started. How you guys doing today? It's Tosan Touche Tanway here. Prop, hooked on phonics, summa cum laude graduate. Um, just playing around with you guys. Wanted to um, review the Women's World Cup 2017. I think it was a wonderful spectacle, very exciting, very compelling. Showed that women's rugby, as we've all known, is a great product. Its product still in development. It's still doing it's still getting out there, and I think one of the most important parts is how we broadcast it. And I think this was one of the best broadcasts as far as content and quality sports events I've seen in a while. Very great visuals, and of course the athletes were fantastic. Competitive matches. We'll talk a little bit more about the parity issues and the structure after the intro and things like that. But I think overall, great event. There's definitely plenty to talk about, a bit of controversy, not necessarily around the competition itself, but just what's the way forward. I think that we really have to face some things about how we viewed and treated a very important part of our community. And I think that the sooner that we come to terms with that, I think the sooner we can move forward. And I'd say promoting more equitable levels of investment so that we can start seeing this product continue to develop as it's blossoming fantastically. But nothing here or there. As you can probably see on the bottom, down here, I got the link scrolling on rugbyrelief.org. As many of you may know, I don't know, most of you are North American in my audience, so you guys are aware of Hurricane Harvey, which has devastated the city of Houston, Texas. And my brother from another mother, from the Propcast, Grant Cole, has been spearheading an effort to sort of help to support and rebuild in the community. Rugby players being who we are, we launch into action when we're needed. And he saw that he was needed, and he is going to go fill that need. Very proud of him. I'm proud of everyone who's been getting involved. And believe me, this is just the beginning. So make sure if you want to know how you can help with this, I mean, this is literally a city underwater. People have lost everything. If you want to find out how you can help, that's a great organization that has just started and sources locally to make sure that your impact is felt locally without a whole bunch of red tape and etc. So that's rugbyrelief.org. It's rugby people doing what we do in the community. And also keep an eye on that for as we see Hurricane Irma bearing down, and it looks like Florida's in its sights. Hopefully it stays out of the Gulf, but we don't know what could happen. So keep an eye on that, and keep an eye on the site there to see what type of activities, what type of help is needed, and see where if you have the ability to help. So let's dive right in. I think that the overview of what we're going to do, we're going to review the World Cup itself. We're going to talk about some takeaways. I think that under there, it's kind of like, well, okay, what should we walk away with from I'll talk about what I feel we should walk away with from this, from that event. Then we talk about success factors. So the people that did well, why did they do well? What was anything? And there were some interesting things, especially statistically, that I think as we become more analytical in how we view the game, looking at statistics, not beyond biometrics, we're talking like usually from a coaching standpoint, we're talking about this game from an observational standpoint, an outcome standpoint. But now, if you go to rugby, rwcwomen's.com, they've collected a fair number of statistics. Not perfect, but definitely more than we've looked at in the past. And there's some very interesting things, everything from kicking to yards gained, territory, etc. And if you look at the matches, it's actually kind of tough to pin down if you just look at the statistics beyond the score, how from game to game, who really won. Everything from turnovers to missed tackles. I think there's a lot there. So we really got to look at these athletes in a way that is a lot more in line with how we view folks in the American sports market. We're very stats driven. So this is I'm over the moon about this because being a data guy, this is something that I can work with and use, and we'll talk about that. And also a bit of a wrap up. I think a bit of a call to action because there's a future here, and I think that there has been some momentum built, and I feel that if we do not consolidate a voice and flow with that momentum, we're going to lose that momentum. And the women of our rugby community, our sisters, will pay for it. And that's something that, as the Apache from Inglorious Bastards would say, I cannot abide. More on that when we get to the third end of things. So, review. Fantastic event. Fantastic. Watched every match, every minute. Even the blowouts were, at the very least, from a sports standpoint, entertaining. A lot of effort, athleticism. Shout out to outside center Hong Kong. I think Thorne Osborne. She played well. I think that was if you look, she's actually at the top of the turnover ratio. She turned over the most ball out of anybody in the tournament. So even the teams that really struggled at times had plenty to be proud of. Plenty. I think that originally I was, by the jersey here, I had been predicting that if the U.S. got enough ball, they would be in the semis. And they got enough ball and they were in the semis. I think we were one of the most dangerous attacking sides in the tournament. I think that sometimes our lack of experience harmed us a bit. I think a lack of a build-up, proper build-up harmed us a bit in terms of continuity. But from out of pure intensity, effort, and physicality, I think that we really pulled a lot of something out of nothing. We did create a fair amount. I think that these athletes have plenty to be proud of. I think we defended well in stretches. We competed with some of the top talent that we can possibly compete against better than we've ever competed against them. I'd say in recent memory. I think for me, one of my favorite points, and there's so many because you have Chris Thomas scoring the bonus point try against England. You have the first half against New Zealand was one of the most physical matches I've ever seen the U.S. play, and from that standpoint, I think it really put our community on notice that we have the athletes to do what needs to be done, but we have to be able to do it sustainably. And before it was a matter of foregone conclusion of, okay, we'll compete the best we can and see what happens. But no, we felt we were in this match, and I think that New Zealand sort of showed what class they are as players and turned things up in the second half, but really turned about 15 minutes of, about 15 minutes, give or take, of the letdown that we allowed them to sort of extend the game away from us. The match against France, much closer, much more hotly contested. Actually, France being a much different team. And actually, I was interested in seeing if the U.S. did not make it, a France-New Zealand final. I think those two teams would have made a very exciting final, not to say that England-New Zealand was not, because that was a barn burner. But I really thought that the matchups there and the styles of play were going to make for a quite a classic. We still got a classic. Don't get me wrong. England, New Zealand. I think there's going to be some revenge on offer come the next World Cup, wherever we decide that's going to be. No bids out yet. I think the U.S. should bid. I think the clear thing that I would be happy to admit is that I'm pleasantly surprised with the the quality of what World Rugby put forward as far as media material. And the reason I say that is because somebody who makes videos. I pay attention to video quality. And it's really frustrating how little high def content is available of women playing rugby at a high level in an exciting fashion. And I think that they've done, for what limited budget I think they had in comparison to the Men's World Cup. I think 7870 is the contractor there. They put together and capture some fantastic sort of classic footage. And I think these are the things that are going to allow these women to go back and say, look, we're worth something here. We were always worth something, but now they can sell it. There's a product, and that's the key. And it looks like something. And the matches were fantastic in themselves. The level of play to me was not really in question, though the level of athleticism that we observed, the amount of actual play. Not a whole bunch of scrums digging into the ground. People stayed on their feet. They kept the ball in play, off kicking from hand more often than not. If you look at the sheer numbers in terms of carries and yards by fullbacks, a lot of counterattacking. I think of the top 5 yardage meters gained people, I think 3 of them are fullbacks. That's a big deal. Celicia Winiata, I think, scored 2 tries off a counterattack on kick. And that's in the final. So from New Zealand. And I think that's a really interesting thing to point out. They're playing exciting rugby that we sort of bemoan in the men's game as boring test rugby, right? We're like, oh, test rugby's going to be tight. It's going to be boring. Kick to the corners, maul it, kick for territory, hope for something to break out, defense to make a mistake, then capitalize, kick your penalties. Plenty of penalties kicked, sure, but I think that it was very clear these athletes wanted to run. And I think even to a fault, at least to my personal playing preference, I think we used too much ball at times, but it made for exciting rugby to watch. There was a frustration, there was sort of, head scratching moments, but then there were also like, oh my gosh, did you see that? Or the boom, somebody gets planted. And I wanted to talk, and we'll talk more about that in the success factors. The top 4 teams, what I saw, a lot of similarities, but there are some stark differences, and including what ended up happening with England, New Zealand. But so we talk about the top 4, right? So we got New Zealand, England, France, USA. Fair enough. I think Canada was unfortunate given the pool, but underperforming against Wales really put the nail in the coffin for them there. Shout out to Magley Harvey and crew there. Check out her 1v1 on our channel. I think it was not a matter from a manner of effort, a lack of effort. I think that it comes down to matchups on the day, and I think that the loss against New Zealand was one thing, but really the inability to get away from Wales was quite tough. And you got to score tries. Bonus points are everything there, and I think that's what really it really shook up the entire tournament. Ireland, the hosts were hoping for more, but really, honestly, their governance and administration really failed them there. I think once Naeem Briggs went down with injury, it was always going to be a tough situation, even with her leadership, given the barriers that they were facing. But still fought well, fought hard. I think that after the battle with Australia, they really, it was a brave effort against France that they put out. But I think that the Irish women definitely feel that there was plenty left on the table, that, what if, etc. But anyway, either way, proud hosts. They made for a great host, great competition there. Wales, interesting in the sense that very physical, not the same. I guess not to the level of say a like France, England, and the rest of the Six Nations group, but certainly made for sure made strong strong competition even especially in the later stages. That's the beauty of the Women's World Cup is that there's still all to play for if you don't make the semis. And we saw plenty of play for them there. Spain and Italy were both in the USA pool. Now for that group, I thought that was something that I didn't know what to make of Italy, but it's interesting how their style really mirror their men. In that very staunch in the set piece, pretty structured. I mean, Furlan played quite well in the back, gaining plenty of meters. They were very physical. But I think that was the match that put everybody on notice that, wow, the USA can be very physical. We out-physicaled them. And they didn't quite know what to do. Same with Spain. Sarah Parsons, I mean, was knocking heads all over the place. People walking around, there's probably some bruised ribs on Spain's side from that match. And these were the things that we were able to push to our advantage. But overall, both of those teams played quite well, and good for Spain and good for Italy for getting a win there in the later stages of the tournament, showing that they can compete. Spain also showed themselves quite well. Then there's Japan and Hong Kong. Japan and Hong Kong, as people that they play each other some reasonably often. I think it's the Asian Five Nations. Don't quote me on that there, but an athlete I used to coach on select side. Laurel Chor was playing wing for them. Shout out to Laurel Chor. How you doing? Georgetown University alumni. She played for the PRU's collegiates. I helped coach her. I think that in a tough pool that Hong Kong was put in, I think they showed themselves quite well and actually had a very productive later part of the tournament. I think that they will be not satisfied, but I think they have plenty to take away for their overall development of rugby, like Coach Hall and them. I think they have a lot to build on there. It's a great experience, and I think that not only will that region be better for it, but their team specifically. Japan, I think they also did quite well considering their pool. All these pools are tough. You only have 12 teams. What are you going to do? You're going to end up with multiple pools of death. We'll talk more about the structure and how that reared its ugly head later on. But I thought Japan was quite physical. I mean, they were undersized. They didn't have the speed that would allow them to be big play threats. But I'll tell you, they defended well in numbers. They played well at set piece. I think that sometimes their discipline let them down. I think they had the one red card of the tournament. But for what it was worth, they no quit. They were fit. I think they were undersized, certainly. But once again, a lot to build on for Japan there. And I think in 2020, Tokyo 2020 is going to be something to look forward to for Japanese rugby in general. So that's kind of the rundown. Now, one thing I was talking about, let's go to structure. Something about the thing with the structure. And Portia Woodman pointed this out. I'm glad, and kudos to her for using her platform to bring this to people's attention. These are things that people don't think about. When we talk about the women's game being treated in a manner that doesn't give it these athletes the respect they deserve, one of these things is format. So these things can affect the outcome of the penultimate match of a tournament. So we look against France. England versus France, that semifinal was absolutely brutal. One of the most physical rugby matches I have ever watched. Coached, seen on TV. If I played it, it probably would have been more physical than anything I've ever played in. Danielle Waterman lost to concussion, starting 15, starting fullback. She and all of her experience gone, concussion. So now, let's add the normal bumps, bruises, and other things that people need to recover from, and then we have that quick turnaround. And let's not act like New Zealand, USA was a cakewalk physically either. That was an incredibly physical match. I mean, Nia Tapper at any given time had 3 people in front of her when they were defending. and the level of contact exceptionally high. And these are the things that people, especially in the American sports market, are very interested in. We want to see the pop, the sizzle. We want the contact. We want to see people getting jacked up. And I think that that's part of rugby. It's not all of it. Of course, there's skill, there's fitness, there's strategy, etc. But to the average sports fan, that helps beyond the story, makes these things exciting. So back to the structure, the turnaround, very, very short. And I think that and quote me, I think the short turnaround hurt England. Coming from the much more physical match. I mean, France was exhausted at the end of that, and the scoreline does not reflect how tight that was. I think they're giving up a very, very soft try on a mistake at the end of the match, trying to push and see if they can just fight their way back into contention. But, Safi Ndiaye, Julie Henry, Marjorie Mayans, the blonde killer herself. They put in some of the the hardest 80 minutes that I could imagine anybody playing. I mean, they had to be devastated because they left everything on the pitch, threw their body sideways into the entire thing. That's how committed they were, and it took everything England had to win that. And I think that it really came down to England's ability to consolidate and work hard as a group. That second extremely experienced front row coming in to help keep things settled in these tight situations. And I mean, they defended. Both teams defended, I mean, quite very doggedly. But that amount of play in that type of match, it was raining, that type of those type of difficulties, it's taxing. So now you have to come around, turn around, and get ready to play a final, biggest match of your 4 years. And they showed up. I think England got ahead in the final, and it seemed that in typical New Zealand fashion, when they will always change gears, and it's just a matter of can you keep up with them. We saw with the Lions when the men played, it was the same thing. They changed gears. Could the Lions stick with them or couldn't they? Same thing here. New Zealand would change gears, get scores, but all of a sudden they would get ahead. Prop has a hat trick. I think it was not for lack of ambition, but I think that eventually, and not interestingly enough, Portia Woodman held reasonably in check for that final. New Zealand really showed they have the full complement to do what they want to do on the rugby pitch. And I think that at a certain level, the healthier of the teams definitely came in with a distinct advantage. And I think the more physical match of the two semis, which was France versus England, I think played a role there. So the structure being as it may, structure's the structure, just like the weather, just like the pitch, etc. But I think it's worth talking about. So kudos to the victors, everybody that played, all 12 of you, New Zealand, England, France, of course the USA, Canada, Wales, Italy, Spain, Japan, Australia, Ireland, Hong Kong. You all have my utmost respect. My hat's off to all of you. I'm proud of you. Very, very proud to have watched and shared and to help promote, and that hasn't ended. Videos are being cut up as we speak to make sure you guys have things that you can help talk about and keep your content in the marketplace and discussion, etc. It's not over. In fact, it's just the beginning of a new discussion, which what's going to be going on with the next World Cup. What's the qualification process, the bids, who's retiring, who's coming back, what are the domestic structures that are going to change to make sure people can compete better than they competed previously. These are all things that when we say, what's next, especially here in the U.S., which I'll talk about shortly. So, next step. I would say we're going to talk about success factors. what made the teams that succeeded at the World Cup succeed? And I think that's interesting, right? You have one team that has a fair number of contracted athletes in England. Not well contracted, but still contracted. And then New Zealand, who still has a reasonably has a looser structure. Now, interestingly enough, both teams, actually all of the top four teams, relied pretty heavily on sevens players. I mean, we talk about the U.S. had a very young back line, and I think all except for one, I think all except for 9 and 10 were on our regulars on the sevens circuit. Chet Amba, Chris Thomas, and Nia Tapper, Lev Kelter, Nicole Heverlin, and crew. I mean, that's that's the entire back line, and then even some depth further beyond that. New Zealand, Celestia Winiata, of course, Portia Woodman, Hohepa, Waka, and Kelly Brazier. So you cannot diminish the impact of sevens athletes in the 15s, in the 15 space. Marjorie Mayans comes to mind right off head for France. And I think when we talk about in England, Emily Scarrett, everything Daniel Waterman, they've all played their role in the Seventh Circuit at some point in time. So we can't discount that. So I think that one success factor I would say is how well integrated your best sevens athletes are into your development system, where if they have value in 15s, they are involved. That is I think that's quite important. If we look at Australia, which had a couple of their seven stars, Sharni Williams and Mahalia Murphy, I think, has been on a couple of times, and not quite a regular, but let's say she was in the pool, of course. I think there is a stark difference when you break from 5 on down versus looking at the top 4, and that's just how it played out. It may not play out like that in the future, but that's what I see right now. Like Canada, another example. I think there were some Karen Pacan, one of my favorite loose forwards. Sevens, all sevens, everything. Wanted to focus on her 15, so she got back to business. And I think she had one of the quietest tournaments, I would say. One of the underrated quiet. She played like a demon, but it's underrated just because of the outcome. I imagine Canada's quite disappointed, but sevens, once again, sevens impact was there. Sarah Goss was a fantastic seven. And I expected nothing less from her. Balancing the physicality of that New Zealand pack, which leads into my next step, my next success factor, which is physicality. There's no substitute for it. There was no. I think sometimes in rugby we downplay it because it's something that once come game day you can't quite control. You either have it or you don't. You're either a team that's benching 1.5 times their weight and squatting a certain amount and going into contact with certain levels of power, speed, and pace, and controlling that contact that way. You have your build, you have your those abilities that you've developed, or you don't, or you've developed them as far as they are, and the matchups are the matchups. But the top 4 teams, and you can make somewhat of an argument for Canada maybe being tied with one of them. The top 5 teams were the most physical sides, point blank, bar none. I think when you look at tackle by tackle, player by player, the sheer ferocity of contact, 1 through 15. Now this isn't just a forwards thing, it's not just a backs thing, not an offense or defensive thing. It is across the board. These were very physical sides. I would say England was probably the most cohesive forwards group that was the most physical. I'd say France across the board 1 through 15 is probably as physical a team as you're going to see, up and down, and in a very confrontational style with their flair that they play. New Zealand, I think the physicality in their forwards, I think, is what what created a lot of opportunities for them to disrupt the continuity of England, which they rely on. It's continuity, its structure, belief in their systems, creating situations that they execute. But as the famous Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan and a structure till you get punched in the mouth. And number 8 Savage, and crew, Linda Itunu and her sister Adora. There were no games played. Charmaine's it's no games played. It was no cut card, knife. Let's get this to a knife fight, and who's gonna? It's you. It's your women versus my women. Your sisters versus my sisters. What are we gonna do? And that final had that, but also the other matches too. The lead up, the semis. The ability to front up against your opposite numbers. I think it's simple, nothing elegant about it. The ability to do that, I think, is one of the things we underrate about New Zealand the most. They're probably 1 through 15 the most athletic side that you will see. Yes, they're going to be very skilled, but I think also they are, because of their athleticism, there's a certain confidence they play with. And that confidence lends to the style and the structure that they play. They believe in it. They're comfortable executing it. And it's a style that allows them to exploit matchup differences. Sometimes sometimes in rugby, especially test rugby, we can actually end up structuring out our matchup advantages for the sake of structure. And I think that's something that every coach and manager and team will wrestle with, every unit. What advantages do you have one-on-one versus your unit advantages? So, physicality. I think the ability to win contact, to be faster than the person in space than you are that's marking you. These things were, just like any other sport. Can you beat the person in front of you? And I'll tell you, no one's better at beating the person in front of them than Portia Woodman, one of the best athletes on planet Earth. That we've seen in the better half, and this is Olympic level dominance. We're talking people that set records in the 100 meters, that type of thing, Serena Williams type stuff. I'll say it right now, the best athletes on planet Earth. And when the world sees that, it's important that we take note, because that means we need to further develop athletes in that mold. There are people just like her out there that have not been called to the game, and they never get involved, or they make it, but they don't get the development and nurturing that'll get them to the level that they would need. But hopefully, because now there's more content available that looks good and people can consume, the game gets talked about. It's in more places. So there's no better recruiting tool or calling card than being able to watch these games and see these women do what they do. But bottom line, physicality, success factor. Now, the final success factor I thought was quite interesting was the ability. I saw that one thing I noticed, it was territory was actually more important than possession across the majority of matches in the in terms of statistics. So you guys go look at RWC women's.com under the stats sheets. Each matchup actually has the game stats down to the time of possession, territory, time and territory, those type of things. And very interesting. Where you played was more important than how long you were playing. And which is interesting in itself, because compared to the Men's World Cup, the ball was in play about something 10% longer. It's whole 8 minutes. 8 minutes of more attacking action, that type of thing. More phases. Now, some of that's going to be bang and crash when you look at like a France, especially like France against Ireland. Forwards, like heavy forwards play boom, 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 boom. But then you have a team like the USA, who really the majority of their carries went to the back three. So literally 2, 3 phases, and we are moving to space, whatever space we got. I think that was something. That's why I think amongst the three of them, Chris Thomas, Cheta Emba, and Nia Tapper, a ridiculous amount of yards and carries. Fair try total, a lot of handling, and I think our centers did quite well. Aleph Kelter and Nicole Heverland to move the ball. A lot of passing. Nicole Heverland passed apparently as often as most fly halves. I think she actually had more passes than Francis fly half playing in that spot. So that might have been by design. But these things are right interesting. Take a look. Because one of the things that people, the women that came on Viral Rugby 1v1 talking about the World Cup, we need to talk about it. Let's talk about them like athletes. Let's look at these things and scratch our heads a little bit. Let's make stupid calls. Let's see it and be wrong, but let's talk about it. And do our analysis and be a Monday morning, as we say here, Monday morning quarterbacks, and keep this discussion going. That's what our job is, right? So we talk about that being a success factor, being able to exploit territory more so than possession, which kind of goes against conventional wisdom when we talk about against the possession game. I think there were a few games that were completely about possession, but two big ones I'll point out: France beating Ireland. France took care of business early and ended up defending most of the second half, but Ireland was in the wrong area. It just didn't matter. It didn't matter. You can play all you want in this area. That's fine. Another one would be with, I think, France and England. England got business done early, took their chances, and kept France having to churn and fight and battle and bash and crash in between their own 22 and their 40. I mean, and you can turn over all the ball you want there. You can, it's all hard yards, and not to say that France didn't have the ability to finish long. No, they did, but making them earn every inch, that was the key. But I think that became England's eventual undoing, because that is a taxing way to play rugby. I think the other thing, when if you look at the statistics from the Canada New Zealand match, same idea. New Zealand didn't play with the ball very long at all, but they did capitalize on turnovers. They actually missed more tackles than Canada did, but their ability to strike quickly and efficiently and finish was the key. I think Canada was more of that build-up team. They required more phases and times to put athletes like put their athletes like Magali Harvey and them away, and they're physical enough to do so. But I think New Zealand was so disruptive physically that eventually that's how quickly it can get away from you. And that was a great example of that match. I think it ended up being 48-5, something of that nature, 48-12. So yeah, I think the three success factors there. People that were successful, they exploited territory. They did so well. They took their chances from wherever those chances were, more so than in terms of holding it, making it work. The overall structure, which is a takeaway in itself. How well did you weather it? But overall, physicality really is what this whole thing came down to for many. So be that, take it as real, comment, see if you agree, disagree, think I'm an idiot, whatever. But that's my opinion there. So we've talked about that, and now I wanted to appeal to anyone who will listen, really. I had a call to action on VileRugby.com about especially we as men becoming better fans of women's rugby. I think we owe them that. I think that on the grassroots to recreational to the governance to the local levels, they are as valuable to our game as anybody else on the planet. They buy tickets, they pay dues, they referee, they coach, they play. They buy jerseys like the one I'm wearing. They sign permissionship slips for their kids to play youth league. They go and they pay lots of money and travel lots of hours to develop themselves as coaches or referees or players. They deserve to be valued stakeholders at the table. And I might even call this a segment one day, but what you're not going to do to my sisters is badmouth our game, because it's our game. It's rugby. There is no difference between men and women's rugby. Just the gender of the women, or the sex of the women playing it, or the people playing it. That's it. Ball's the same size. Pitch is the same size. The rules are the same. But what's different is the level of investment that we feel they are worthy of. So I read an article yesterday from New Zealand that somebody who I don't even feel like naming at the moment decided to say that it's not sustainable to pay the New Zealand women in some sort of contracting vehicle. Bullshit. You heard me. I said it. Bullshit. Things get done when people decide it's important enough to get done. That's business. Money shows up magically. That's the reason budget shortfalls have existed since long before women were playing international rugby. So the way I see it, and I'll speak on my own union because we got plenty of disparity to deal with here. I'm tired of watching unions balance budgets on the backs of our sisters. That's really what they're doing, right? We won't invest in their game at the level they deserve. And then we'll turn around and say, oh, it's not the product that we want. That's bullshit too. It's input, output. ROI means return on investment. So if you haven't invested in them as athletes, and then you're critical of the return you get, I mean, I'm not sure that's a just way to critique anyone. You keep hearing things like it's not sustainable. Well, how do we fund this? Is it, men's events make more money, this, that, and the other? We really, before we start talking about return, we have to talk about the initial investment. So at what point are we going to approach this with some intellectual honesty from the standpoint of we need to figure out what the investment point is where we can break even and make money with women's rugby. France made big bets on theirs. Like I said, it becomes about sourcing the funds and deciding that these things are non-negotiable. I would love to see some actual governance-related courage from World Rugby, where we decide, and that's my dog, as we would decide to how we apply sanctions, things like prize money. Make sure that we make as much funding available to the development of the women's game as we can. No one's going to come out as large scale sponsors unless they see these things, that people are actually serious about investing in it. Then we can talk about creating events that people will come to and they will make money. But I think we have to be honest about it. And going back to the thing I originally said about balancing the budgets on the backs of the women, that's speaking directly to what happened here in the U.S. We had a high performance shortfall of a ridiculous amount of money, and as a result, the build up to the Rugby World Cup was affected. So they had to pay for that. Yeah, our sisters. And I don't know how y'all grew up, but I don't believe that at any point you would allow your sister to starve to feed your brother. You just won't. I got a daughter. I'll probably end up having a few kids. And there, at no point in the household that I govern would one child eat while another child goes hungry. Off the premise that one is a less risky investment, I guess. I don't know, maybe that's what we're calling it. No. Because obviously, given the shortfall that we're dealing with, it's not, I'm not sure what the difference in the investments are. We have negative, and what are we comparing here? So maybe we need to think in different terms about how we're developing budgets for these things and how we're measuring success. When we talk about ROI, maybe we should be talking about results versus return. Results can include monetary return. Maybe we got to make sure we hit a certain margin, but what were the results? What did we get? Did we get any growth? Did we get any better PR? Think about it. Results on investment. It's a different way to think about it. You know, are we able to compensate as equitably as possible? Have we approached sponsors that's a value for them in terms of corporate responsibility? Is that a part of the values of our organization? I remember reading something on Scrum Queens, shout out to Scrum Queens, that the U.S. has the most adult women playing rugby as of 2016. That's serious. That's serious. And I think that in the size of our sports market, most sports that have had any manner of seriousness about them have worked very hard in including women as stakeholders in that. And I think that this is something that's long overdue for women in the game. I think that they have a vested interest, and we have a vested interest in their success. So let's act like it. Beyond just being fans, cheering, and things like that, I think we need to start holding folks accountable for the future of the women's game. And this is not just lip service. I'm done with fucking lip service. Pardon my French. Where's my English? My pigeon? No. Done with fucking lip service for the women. No more lip service. That should be actually, you know what? That should be the slogan going forward. No more lip service. Right. Right now, there are no women on the World Rugby board. There was only one woman head coach at the Women's World Cup. We need to start asking the questions: who are the top 10 women's coaches in the world, and how many of them are women? And if we haven't had anybody that's made the cut, who are we developing to make sure they eventually do? It's not about saying, okay, men can't, or men can, or women can, or women can. But we should be able to look up and see, hey, these are the best coaches in the world, and it's representative of the people that play this game. Because I know plenty of women that have played this game at a very high level would make fantastic coaches. I think they just need to develop an opportunity to do so. We've done a reasonably good job as referees, developing them in that context. So now next thing is coaches and moving them through these new opportunities to play. And as we see more and more universities in the United States and Canada, et cetera, where they're running programs and leading programs, that's where that development is going to continue to happen. So I'm interested in the next 5 years what that looks like. But we need to be on the hook for that. We need to be measuring that at a governance level. Just as important as who's playing rugby, who's coaching it, who are we developing, and how. It increases the visibility of the sport and the reach of it, the cultural relevance. It's very, very important stuff, especially when we talk about developing nations. Because these are things that can have the social impact of rugby that we so value and we talk about, but we pay lip service to when it comes to dealing with the disparities of how rugby treats women. And I'm just going to keep on 100 with you. I'm not here to lie to anybody. That's why I started this channel. The videos I made included women and people that we don't always see playing rugby. Well, because we want more people to play rugby, right? So representation has always been the way to go. Not saying it has to be artificial or forced or anything like that, but I think people have to look with an eye that will allow them to see these things. But like I said, so take away from my call to action: no more lip service. Tired of that shit. I want to see union by union holding themselves to account. And World Rugby needs to stop being cowards about this and start holding unions to account about this too. You give out the sanction, World Rugby. So if you decide that things need to be a certain way in order for certain unions to participate at a certain level that they do, right? You could. So maybe these old dudes sitting up at this board meeting, get your spines together, And let's figure our sisters into this plan. We keep talking about growth and rugby's the new this. No. Where, if my sister's not with me, it's not growing. I don't care how the metrics we talk about, it doesn't count. Because especially here in the U.S., I think that we need to make sure that we are keeping pace with that. Their money is just as green as mine. Their rugby is just as good. Their opportunities to play has the same social value, and they can contribute the same value to the community, into the rugby community, and be ambassadors outside of it. So no more lip service. I hope y'all can live with that. So I think we're almost done. I think that's the hour for today. I actually haven't been keeping any tabs on the live chat. Hey, Strobro, what's up, man? I think he said louder. I wonder what this actually sounds like. I'll go back and look. But leave your comments on the page. This will be up. Share it around. You think I'm spot on, full of shit, confusing, boring, fun, whatever. Hit me on viralrugby.com, Viral Rugby Facebook page. Of course, Viral Rugby TV here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Like the Viral Rugby Facebook page. Be on the lookout for the Propcast. Be on the lookout for other great rugby podcasts like the Strobro, Earful of Dirt. He has a great podcast going. Let's talk about my brother from another mother on the Propcast. This is Texas Rugby. Check him out. There's all kinds of great things going on here in North America from a rugby media standpoint. Of course, Chuck to my Nigerian brother. Gift Time at Belu with Gift Time Rugby down south. I think we have a wonderful contingent of people. Matt McCarthy up with the Rugby Wrap Up, DJ Coyle, and of course women that have been in this game for a minute. Jackie Finland with the Breakdown. We have Wendy Young running Your Scrub Half Connection, which probably is the oldest outside of Golf Rugby Report, which was Golf on Rugby for years. So let's patronize these people. Go to my page. I'm putting up banners of all these folks for you guys to go and check out because we need to grow this. And anybody has anybody in Canada that's doing anything, hit me up. I'll put your banner up. I don't care. I'm not hard to find. So that being said, this is Tosan from Viral Rugby, your favorite prop, Hooked on Phonics graduate, summa cum laude. And also make sure you go check out Rugby Relief, rugbyrelief.org. All right, it should be scrolling at the bottom. Should be very clear for you guys to see. And reach out to them if you feel like you can help with anything that's going on with the cleanup from Hurricane Harvey or the preparation of what's to come from Hurricane Irma. These are some serious things, and some people will be quite bad off. So, like, hey, we do what rugby players do. We support when it's ugly. At least we know as the forwards, the backs, can do their thing. All right, folks. Hey, pleasure. First live show in a while. Look out for the videos. Let me know what you think. I look forward to seeing you all out in cyberspace. Go Eagles.